Welcome back to part 2 of working with structures. And in this part, we're going to be talking about initializing the, um, the attributes in your structures. So all those variables that you create, a way to, or different ways to initialize those. So first, we're going to look at how some functions that you already use, like the string function, gives you different ways to initialize the string. So here on my left here in this exercise, I'm not actually doing the exercise, I'm just using this to show you different ways you can initialize strings. So here I've defined a variable called name1. I've defined it as string. On a separate line, I've assigned it the name Maria, and on the third line, I've printed the name Maria. So down here, we see that Maria gets output or displayed in our output screen. In my second option, I defined a variable called name2, and I've also, as I define it and I initialize it to the name mark by passing the string mark to the variable data type. So I initialize it to mark, I print name2, and I see mark. Another way that I can initialize it is it gives me, string gives me a function or a method called init. And init, what you do is you pass it whatever it is you want to initialize your string to. And so here I pass it Joe, and I print name3, and it initializes to Joe. So this is 3 different ways that I can initialize my string. Here I define it, initialize it, use it. Here I define it, initialize it at the same time, define it, initialize it at the same time. So by looking at this comes with the string data type. I want to do the same thing with the structures. So the structs that I create, looking back here at the structure, let's see, I'm going to go back to page 1 where I created, oh goodness, I want to go previous, and previous. Okay, and one more. Okay, so here's the structure that I created earlier called GPS, and I have one function in here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at the different ways that I can initialize this longitude latitude in my structure. And looking at this example, by the way, there's something called member-wise initialization. We're going to look to see what that is versus a custom initialization. So here they use init to initialize. We can use it with the booleans, integers, and strings. We can do this. We can pass it nothing, and it also initializes it. So in this example, we have a structure named odometer. It contains one variable called count of data type int, initialized to 0. So this is a default initializer. What happens is if I create an instance of odometer, so this is an instance of odometer, and I don't give it anything in my parentheses, automatically it will give me a 0 when I print count. Okay? So it just starts automatically at 0. Now, if I give it a value like count 27,000, my odometer will then be initialized to this number instead of the 0. So here I'm giving it a value. This is called member-wise initializer, and this is just my default value. This is a member-wise initializer. Here's another example for person. When I did this, when I said let person equals person names Jasmine, I also have the member-wise initializer. So I got to initialize it when I actually made the instance of person. And for car and shirt, these are my member-wise initializers, here and here. So here I have GPS, and here's my instance of GPS. So I didn't give it any data inside my argument, so it automatically initialized it to 0 and 0. And if I were to actually put two numbers in here, which I think I may have done earlier when we looked at this, then it would initialize it to the values. So, for example, just do this again. Take this out. I'm going to take all this code out here for now. And so I have someplace equals GPS. Then inside, I would say latitude colon, let's say it's 50.3, and longitude is, I don't know, 40.5. Okay, it doesn't like my comments. Oh, because this is an 8 and not, there we go. Let's see if it likes them now. It does. All right, so I've defined, this is a member-wise initialization, and then when I print, it now sets longitude and latitude, and that's all that your book is saying. It's just really, I found it to be a bit confusing of what it was trying to say. And then the other thing that we can do is we can actually create an init function, and let's look and see how that looks like. So here we have a structure called temperature. We have a variable called Celsius of type double, and we create an init and actually this is another property. So we initialize Celsius to whatever value the user sends to us. And then we say self.Celsius equals Celsius. Self meaning like the Celsius in this structure. Self.Celsius equals Celsius. And then in this particular case, what they're saying is, well, we want the user to be able to give us a Celsius temperature or Fahrenheit temperature, and no matter what they give us, we'll set if they give us a Fahrenheit temperature, we'll convert it to Celsius and we'll assign Celsius the temperature. So they have another init, and this one is passing it the Fahrenheit temperature. They do the conversion here, assign it to Celsius, and so if I make a constant called current temperature and I give it a Celsius temperature, it prints 18.5, if I give it a Fahrenheit temperature, it converts it and it gives me a 100 Celsius. So I can do that also. And that's the end of this lesson. Let's take a look at some of the questions that it will ask you when it talks about member-wise functions or member-wise initialization. So notice at the top here, let's not do that one, let's go to the next one. And next one. Okay, so this one is talking about member-wise and custom initializers. So it says if you completed the exercise structs, instances, and default values, you create a GPS struct with default values for properties latitude and longitude. It says create your GPS struct again, but this time do not provide default values. Both properties should be a type double. Okay, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to grab my struct. Here it is. I'm going to copy it. Okay. So I'm going to create my GPS struct again, but I don't, it says, but this time do not provide default values. So what that means is I'm not going to do this. Sorry, my machine is thinking. I'm going to be getting a new machine tomorrow, so that will be exciting. Okay. Deleted too much. Okay, it's really thinking. Come on. Alright, I'm just going to do this by hand. So we'll do that, and then var longitude :double. Okay, so that's what it's asking us to do, and I'm going to leave my function here even though it's not needed. And then here it says now create a constant instance. Constant instance. So remember the instances you create, first of all, it's a constant, so we're going to say let, and the instance is the instance of GPS. I can call it anything I want, but it says to call it someplace, so someplace, and so I'm reading the errors that it gives me as I'm typing stuff in. Okay, so let someplace, and we're going to go back to here. So here's the instance, let something equals, and then the name of your structure. My name of the structure is GPS. So create a constant instance of GPS called someplace, and use the member-wise initializer to let longitude be this, and latitude be this, and longitude be this. Print the values of someplace. So I would just say latitude, and I'm going to give it a value 51.514004, comma, longitude of 0.125226. Okay. And then I'm going to use my function that I created earlier to make things easier, and I'm going to call it someplace.print the data. just because I did it this way here. But if you don't have this function, then you would just say someplace dot latitude, someplace dot longitude. You would print that. So it prints the latitude and longitude. Then it says instructs instance and default values. You also create a book struct. Create the struct again without default values. So we're doing the same thing again. And then here's asking you to create custom initializers. One initializer would take a double argument and represent height in inches. The other initializer would take a double argument that represents height in centimeters. So this problem, it's wanting you to do this. Two init functions, one taking centimeters and the other one taking, so here it takes Fahrenheit, so this would be centimeters. And the first one takes inches. So you have to convert so it says make a height struct, blah, 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 blah. Create two custom initializers. One will take a double argument that represents height in inches. The other will represent height in centimeters. So then you convert the centimeters, it looks like, to inches. So it wants inches, but it can take centimeters, and you convert it to inches. Okay, so if you have questions about this, just go back to here. This is in your book also, and look to see how they created two custom initializers. Okay. This is the end of section 2.3. Please don't hesitate to email me if you have any questions.